Hey there, I'm Ben. Putrims Projector Review. Important note, for the first time in my short YouTube career, a company has asked to send me a product for free. Cool, right? Well, less cool because there are a lot of ethical kind of conundrums that come with things like this. I'm going to put a disclosure in the description if you would like to read it. The TLDR is that I don't sell reviews and I never will. Kind of defeats the purpose of doing a review in my opinion. Also, because I am a massive cynic and I have no trust in anyone anymore, I bought a non-review model because something due diligence, and also aside from all 1200 of you, all I really have is my journalistic integrity. So more on what that means to me below the like button. Okay, let's start with packaging. Unfortunately, nothing really great is happening with the packaging. There's a lot of plastic-based stuff here, which will probably last long enough to clog the lungs of our children's children. I can say without a doubt that I have seen much more exciting packages. I'm actually contractually obligated to make at least one dick joke per video, so thanks so much for watching. And since packaging and professionality kind of go hand in hand, can I just also acknowledge that their website has unfinished web pages which are live? Things like FAQs that say, input your text here. This does not inspire confidence. But let's talk about the build and design. Overall, I would say that the build quality feels very mid-level, which feels kind of appropriate for the price. Could be confirmation bias, but I would also say that the plastic feels a little cheap. It has one small adjustable foot, and I do seriously wish they had made it so it can't fall out, but it can. It automatically senses its orientation, and I actually love how shockingly convenient this is. Also, because this thing evidently has a camera for the sake of grabbing focus, I would say it would be kind of good if it just was able to scan the QR code for Wi-Fi connection. There is some kind of sketchy stuff regarding the camera, but we'll get to it. Also, I really wish there was a place to put the lens cap or even just a string that attaches it so it doesn't get lost. Moving on to projection performance. As I often do with projector reviews, I should just point out that my cameras are not as powerful as the human eye. This results in the weird paradox of an otherwise grainy or bad image looking much better when it's filmed. Take what you're seeing in this video and reduce your expectations by like 20%, but I do also have a popcorn ceiling, so scale up your expectations by like maybe 5 or 10%. In their documentation, they claim its minimum throw is 3 feet. That's something they put in writing. This is not the case. If you want a sharp image, you'll need at least 3.5 feet or 106 centimeters. Even at this distance, it struggles to focus. You would be much better off at 4 feet. This annoys me a lot because it very obviously doesn't really work at 3.5 feet, and if you were to say install a mounting hook or some other thing and just took them at their word, you would very swiftly have to go back to renovating. That said, at 3.5 feet with very shaky autofocus, the screen is about 32 inches corner to corner. Because it does do this autofocus thing a lot when bumped, I would suggest that you mount it just like you would with any other standard non-mobile projector. I notice, however, that now and again it misfocuses. The silver lining here being that there is a button on the remote for manually adjusting that. It's pretty easy. Also, I am kind of impressed that it remembered the image scale size even when it got unplugged. Obviously, this thing has an internal battery, which again, when we talk about privacy is going to become a problem, but bear with me. There are also some problems associated with its memory. Getting back to picture quality, I would say that unfortunately turning up the brightness washes out a lot of the lighter tones. For colors that are white on white, it just blends them together completely at max brightness. Like a guy wearing a white shirt against a cream wall would just look like he was part of the wall. After about 4 hours of playback, or I should say during that time, I noticed a little bit of stuttering or juddering. Regarding hours of playback, I asked the manufacturer and their claim is that the lamp in this projector is supposed to last 100,000 hours. Wow. This sounds like bullshit for a number of reasons. Getting a 100,000 hours of use rating is unlikely in the best of cases. Now, it's possible that these guys beat the system or developed some new tech, but I strongly doubt it. Also, they would have said as much if they had, because they are not shy about self-promotion to the point of maybe fibbing a little. Also, if a similarly priced projector from a well-regarded, long-standing projector maker like Epson can only get around max 10,000 hours, I would be shocked if a newcomer could come in and do better. Also, such an unusually long lifespan would also depend largely on maintenance and usage patterns. And lastly, this is bullshit because the Amazon listing is very generous to this device. If they were using an ultra high performance lamp or a laser projector, there's no way they would be quiet about it. The fact that they are very quiet about it, again, makes me think that whatever they've used is the absolute bare minimum. Okay, software. A lot of the software on this device feels like 10 different people made 10 different pieces and then they were all just Frankenstein together. Granted, this is how a lot of software is created, but normally it's done well. It's basically two operating systems poorly glued together, and A great example of this is how there are two volume sliders for some reason, and if one is turned all the way down, they'll be turned up simultaneously, but only one can be maxed out if the other is maxed out first, if that makes any sense. Another great example is how if I use Google TV settings to pair my headphones, for example, and then check the Projector software, that device is not remembered. There is some good news, however. Google TV has a setting, it's a little buried, which will attempt to unify the volume sliders into one, and on my review device, it worked. I would also say that Frankensteining notwithstanding, choosing Google TV makes this product significantly better. I feel like I can trust Google to keep the software at least up to date. Regarding the Projector software itself, you can actually change the picture settings like brightness and contrast, although they can only be found if you dig into the user settings. Weird because they can't be found under any other heading like picture or literally anywhere else. Oh yes, the bug that I mentioned earlier. So I really dislike that once you manually keystone it, it seems to be locked in and remember that manual keystoning like forever. You could change it and it seems to just bounce back to whatever it was that you did the first time. Now, as I mentioned, I bought a non-review model just to check, and the non-review model is the one that I had a problem with, which this is why we do our due diligence. So like and subscribe. This bug did not persist in the review model that was sent to me. Also, if you bought this for screen mirroring, maybe don't. You will not be able to use this as another monitor because the lag is very intense. Also, as I've hinted, there is a camera built into this thing that sees everything on your screen. Like, really the only thing you could do is maybe slides and obviously movies and television. Again, referring to the Projector's software, I would say that the home screen is kind of useless unless you have a USB drive plugged in. The Office Suite movie, photo, and music options don't really do anything unless there's a drive. It's also very weird to me that there's no button in the software that's designed to take you to the better developed software, i.e. Google TV. Google TV would have been a great focal point for this device. Instead, you've just got buttons for YouTube, Netflix, Prime, and Disney+. To get Google TV, you either need to choose the profile button or activate Google Assistant. I also dislike that screen resizing can only be done in 5% increments instead of 1. I guess I could just move my device backwards if the adjustment isn't precise enough, but again, if I have it mounted, I can't really do that. If you can't move your device around, then you're just stuck with a screen that's either too big or too small. I do like, however, that you can turn off autofocus and keystoning. Honestly though, the autofocus is decent enough that I would be happy just leaving it on. If nothing else, it gets you close enough, and most of the time it's fairly accurate. As with a lot of other smart devices, this one requires you to hunt and peck to enter your password. Yet another reason to abandon physical remotes. Just put a QR code on the machine, let me control it that way. I've actually talked about this at length in my extremely successful Apple TV review. Lastly, in Projector software, let's talk about what it is like to use with a USB drive. Honestly, I'm not really mad about how easy this was. Aside from the buy our premium version of what looks like Microsoft Word, it's a very plug-and-play situation. For PDFs, there is that bootleg-looking version of Microsoft Word that's used for this, and yes, it does immediately ask you to buy the premium version, the DocX. Again, no issues with this other than being asked to purchase software I've never needed. MP4, no trouble playing videos, and they didn't even ask me to buy the premium MP4 player. For the record, all of the pieces of software I've just mentioned, they seem to work just fine aside from like one annoying pop-up at the beginning. It wasn't even that persistent. Like I saw it once and that was it. So let's talk about audio performance. The audio on this is decent, but it's not really enough. Imagine it's like a mid to low tier Bluetooth speaker. I have, however, had the volume maxed out since I got it, and honestly, it's just enough in a small, dead silent room. It can get relatively loud, but not as loud as my much older, much cheaper TV. My mediocre TV can get loud enough that I worry about the neighbors in the next apartment. This thing is just on the edge of that. The actual dynamic range of the audio is pretty good as well. Even though it's maxed out, it still gets high and low notes decently. That said, if you were expecting crystal clarity, maybe this is not for you. I'm starting to wonder if maybe it would be better to just sell the projector and the speaker as a pair, since doing otherwise requires for the sound always to be behind the viewer if you are in fact using that speaker. Also starting to wonder if maybe it might just be better to stop selling speakers with projectors, given that most people have a Bluetooth speakers or headphones anyway. On that note, pairing my headphones was normal and easy. Let's dig into the remote experience for real this time. This remote uses a combination of Bluetooth and infrared, which basically means that some buttons will just always work and other buttons, depending on which way you point it, might not work immediately. It can be kind of disorienting because you're like, well, this button is flawless and this one isn't. And I think that can be, again, disorienting to a first-time user. That said, overall, it's about 99% successful. It's a decent remote. It's, again, kind of cheap. And as I said, it should have a Google TV button on it. With both models, I experienced this issue where both remotes just stopped working. It seems that sending the power off signal is strong enough to fix this issue, but more than once I did have this problem. Again, it wasn't huge, but it was worth mentioning. Losing the remote essentially means that you can no longer control the device. This device has Bluetooth, so it would be nice if there was just some sort of open source software that would allow users to connect to the device and control it like like a regular remote. Honestly, with the meteoric rise in e-waste production, I would really love to see a fully remoteless future. Next, casting and connectivity. So on Android, it won't just cast from the YouTube app for some reason. You have to download the Miracast app, and I think that just has to do with the way its protocols are configured. Disclosure, I am fully guessing here. I really dislike that I have to go to the wireless connection screen on the Projector software anytime I want to AirPlay to it. Why can't it just have a remembered device list from which I can cast at all times? Or just enable a setting which allows any device on my network to cast. Regarding casting specifically, this is weird because there are allegedly two ways to do this. You can allegedly do it using the Projector's OS via Miracast, or because it's Google TV, you can just cast natively. And again, this is one of those funny Frankenstein kind of device moments because you can cast to this device without it actually working. So if you're not using the input from the Google TV, it'll connect to that Google TV and be casting. It'll be working, but it won't look like it's working because you're in the Projector software, not the Google TV software, which if my grandmother wasn't already dead, I think this would have killed her. If you're lucky, you'll just have your Google TV open when you attempt this. If not, you'll be sitting there wondering why the instructions don't match what you're seeing on your phone. Okay, so how reliable was this? Well, it did crash about halfway through a 1-hour episode of Severance, and if you haven't seen Severance, good God, you need to watch that show. I don't want to overhype it, but Jesus, I've watched it 3 times. It's so good. Anyway, this crash occurred while it was playing on Apple's Apple TV app, which is developed for Google TV. Yes, it gets confusing. It also crashed while mirroring with AirPlay. I do really dislike that it resets the user settings back to the default every time it powers down. And as mentioned, there are some cases, as with the non-review model, where it just remembers all the time, and that's actually worse because obviously I'm taking it to different places. It could be that I misused the software or I misunderstood how it works, but I was not able to get it to stop remembering when I wanted it to stop remembering. I'm guessing a factory reset would probably solve this problem. Ultimately, there are some things I would like it to remember, like my picture settings, brightness, contrast, etc., and then there are keystoning things which vary by location. Comparison with other models. So just for shits and giggles, I decided to compare it to the $100 garbage projector from Amazon, and I'm actually happy to say that the image from the Putrims projector is noticeably brighter and more vivid. Honestly, the experience otherwise is pretty much identical. Smart home integration. Obviously, this does have the Google Smart TV features, and it is quite useful at times. Frustrating, however, that even though it's in my Google Smart Home, I can't use Google Assistant to turn on the device. This is made worse by the fact that you might be able to get away with just leaving your TV on nonstop if you like, but for a projector like this, the bulb has a limited lifespan and it isn't cheap. Therefore, it would make even more sense if Putrims had worked to make this device accessible to smart home integration within the OS they added on top of Google TV. Again, having a projector which turns on in the morning and has my schedule on it is pretty cool. And this one is bright enough that I could probably see black on white text, even in the daytime. Let's talk about the 3-year extended warranty. This is a frustration point because you only get a 3-year warranty if you activate it. Quick to mention it in the Amazon listing, but they don't tell you that you have to do this. You're also not prompted to do so during setup. Further, you have to literally write a review for them if you want to get it. I would also just point out that instead of using a replaceable bulb, which consumers can do by themselves, they've basically just said, we've given you a 2-year money-back guarantee, so don't worry. And I guess the best we can hope for from this device is 2 years of functionality before the bulb dies, at which point they'll just throw out the whole fucking machine, which is, of course, lovely. I do just also want to make a side note that I did ask them if the lamp was replaceable, and they said yes. When I asked further, hey, could a normal person with normal tools replace the lamp? They just stopped answering my emails. So full disclosure, this was also the point at which I told them I wasn't going to be giving discount codes or links for the device because, again, I'm trying to hold on to my journalistic integrity here. I started doing this because I felt like you can't trust reviews on Amazon. So in a nutshell, yeah, you've been warned. This company does seem to fib a little. Which brings me to my next point, ethics and environment. I think I could do a whole video on the Amazon listing, which is actually a little bit funny. The Amazon ad just looks shady. There are some made up words. I'm not joking. No, I'm not going to drop a link to it. Again, there's a lot of unnecessary plastic in this device and also in the packaging. Given that they came to me, I'm surprised there's nothing about environmental care or corporate responsibility on their half-finished website. In such cases, I think it's best to just assume that this product is made of asbestos and manufactured by slave children and that their factory feeds directly into the home of 100 or so endangered species. At the very least, I would like to know that they're not employing wage slavery or just outright slave labor to create this device. This was on my list of questions to ask them, but again, they stopped responding to my emails. The Amazon listing also says that it's not just for nighttime, which again, you might be able to read text in the daytime, but a movie would be horrendous. Now let's talk about privacy. I would really love it if there were some privacy guarantees around how the company accesses this camera. Shit, I would love it if the company just acknowledged openly that it's a camera. It being a company that I'm not really familiar with, I feel pretty sketch about mounting a camera designed and built by one of these very transient, anonymous Amazon companies in my home. In the manual, they've labeled it as the focus signal receiver, which again, upon emailing them, I found they literally just admitted to the fact that it's a camera. I really don't like that they didn't just say this. Having read their privacy policy, honestly, every time I do this, any faith I had in modern business people just dies a little more. Here's why. When you read it, the privacy policy does look pretty transparent and decent. That is, unless you read the first paragraph, which says there's another privacy policy, which for some reason isn't listed and which may supersede this one. I actually emailed them about this, and the marketing rep stated that the one on their site was the one which is in effect, and that the other privacy policies mentioned would only be applicable if signed. But again, that isn't explicitly acknowledged in the current document. Also, if that's the case, then why did you mention it in the first place? And you'll forgive me if one email from a marketing rep isn't exactly what I would consider a legally binding agreement. Summary. To put it in a nutshell, it's an okay projector with a pretty mid speaker. This video has taken longer to produce than I would have liked, so I haven't been able to compare it to a similarly priced product, but honestly, I really think you can get better value for your money. I don't have a ton of experience here, but the slapped together software and sometimes ineffective hardware just doesn't feel like the $600 experience that this thing pretends to be. And I say pretends because I've seen it regularly discounted to $400, and I would guess that even that is a significant markup. I hate that this thing is basically designed to work for only 2 or 3 years and then just be thrown away. This would be so much less repugnant if the company offered any kind of repairability or circular supply chain. Again, my limited research shows that Epson does sell a version with an easily replaceable lamp. What you need to know is that it creates an okay picture in a dark room on a white background, and that's it. I would strongly encourage you not to buy this product for a wide array of reasons, not least of all because this has a camera on it, which they didn't disclose, and that sees everything you project. Again, if there were any legal assurance in their privacy policy, or if they just had any kind of track record, I would feel less bad about this. So many things about the unprofessional nature of this company scream that they won't be there in 3 years. So your warranty probably isn't good either. Lastly, there's the half-truths and the fibs. My gut says that this is not a company to trust. And frankly, I would trust them about as far as I can throw their corporate headquarters. Don't buy this product. You've been warned. Okay, thank you for watching all the way to the end of the video. Genuinely, it means so much to me. I do work really hard on these, and as I've said to many a house guest, thanks for coming. It does mean so much. And if you're here, subscribe. Okay, that's it. I'll be right back.